Welcome to another game analysis episode, where we extract lessons from viewers' games. If you want to have your game analyzed next on this channel, comment your game PGN below. In this game, we are going to focus on the ideas of subtle improving moves in solid positions, and identifying your opponent's potential threats, which was Black's greatest weakness in this game. Black had a few key moments where he had an opportunity to negate White's threats, had he taken the time to identify them. Often, the biggest problem isn't figuring out how to refute the threat, but simply identifying the threat in the first place. If you would like to follow along, click the link below, which will take you to a study with the game, as well as interactive exercises we will do throughout the video. Learning is strongest when you are actively participating and trying to figure out the solutions for yourself, so I recommend doing this. Let's dive into the game, which starts with an interesting opening. We start with a classic Reti opening. Black handles the opening fairly well, so we won't spend too much time analyzing it, but I do think he chose a less practical variation to play. C6 defends the d5 square, and is by no means a bad move. However, at the Masters level, Black has a win rate of only 21% here, and loses 37% of the time. Even at a more casual chess level, White wins this position significantly more often than Black. To play this opening competitively, the strongest response is by far the pawn push d4. d4 invades White's territory and limits development, blocking the b-knight's natural developing square on c3, and limiting White's ability to push pawns into the center. Now, a Reti player will be prepared for this move, so there are several lines that need to be studied to capitalize on your edge here as Black. At this level, White is likely to respond with e3, though there are several strong moves like b4, g3. And here, Black needs to be patient, simply adding a defender to the pawn, two attackers, and two defenders. White is forced to take the pawn, trade off material, and be left behind in development. Black would have been mistaken playing d takes e3, giving White a very strong center. Black must also avoid pushing the pawn, because it will be hard to defend after White attacks it a second time. Black can try to hang on to it with the bishop, but is now just losing. We'll skip ahead now somewhat. Just remember to push d4 and hold on to your pawn there when facing the Reti. In fact, you could still push d4 here, and basically admit the c6 pawn move was weak. Okay, that was a lot of moves. Let's pause here for a while. Both sides played very solid openings, getting their pieces out, leaving the tension in the middle with the c and d pawns, d5, and getting their kings to safety. But now what? This is where less experienced players may get a little impatient and start looking for some sort of sacrifice or attack that frankly isn't there. Not a single piece has been taken off the board yet. All of the pieces are active and pawns are connected. There's not going to be much of an attack yet. So we need to look for subtle improving moves and look for pawn breaks to open up the position in a way that would favor us while limiting White from doing so. Pause the video here and click exercise number 1 to give this move a shot before we discuss further. We're not looking for checkmate here, but we can improve our position. First, we need to identify our worst piece. There are a few options, such as the a8 rook or the d7 knight. But I would argue that the weakest piece, and the most easily improved, is the f8 rook. It will gladly take the semi-open e-file, which will prove useful later in the game. As a bonus, it also defends the previously undefended bishop. In the game, Black added an attacker to the knight, which isn't a horrible move. However, the knight has an easy escape route with nx d7, and the bishop is somewhat misplaced here, staring at a solid pawn, and leaving the knight with one less defender. White takes advantage of this, stacking Black's f-pawns. While this may look bad, Black can easily stick the king on g7, and defend the pawns holding everything together. and it is surprisingly difficult for white to punish the f-pawn weakness. White immediately tries to attack the weakness, but black defends simply. Okay, pause the video again and attempt exercises 2 and 3. Black needs to identify white's idea behind rook e1 and find a way to refute it. After identifying e4 as the threat, black correctly identifies that he needs more attackers on the e4 square and plays rook e8. Black now has 3 attackers on e4, and white only has 2 defenders, effectively preventing e4. White then plays this awfully strange move, retreating the knight to the rim. Can you find white's idea here? And a way to prevent it? This move is not dangerous if we can identify what is going on, but quickly ended the game for black after failing to do so. Pause the video and attempt exercises 4 and 5. Hopefully, you identified white's threat. He can play knight to g4, which attacks 2 weak pawns. This position is defendable, but could be easily prevented with bishop f5, blocking the g4 square. However, in the game, white ignored the threat and simply played a5. White, of course, gets the knight out to its strongest square, and black must defend correctly, because white has 2 threats here, the first being the f6 pawn attack, and the second being the h6 pawn attack. When the queen swings over, black failed to find a move that could defend both threats, and focused only on the first. This is a clear blunder, as white now can swing the queen over and carry out his second threat. Pause and attempt exercise 6 to see if you could find the best way to defend both threats. Now that you've done that, you know that black needed to play queen to e6, defending the f6 pawn again. And this move covers the second threat also with f5, allowing a discovered defender on the h6 pawn, and kicks the knight away. Unfortunately, it is now too late to defend the h6 square, and black blunders the game. And black resigns. The root cause of this quick digression from a solid position to resigning was simply from not identifying the threat that the knight carried on g4. It was easily preventable, and the game would have gone on. If you don't understand an opponent's move, take some time to figure out what they are thinking and figure out how to refute any dangerous lines they may have found. The knight to h2 move was actually a very weak move if black had simply identified what white was trying to do. Thanks for watching, and comment your PGN below for a chance to be featured next.